welcome back to the All Hazards Prepper Show, your go-to spot for all your disaster prep information and how to survive wild SHTF scenarios. Plus, we'll chat about the chaos of the world, throw in weather updates, and cover any topics the All Hazards Prepper has in his head this week. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform and join us on social media. Now, let's welcome your fearless leader and the brains behind the All Hazards Prepper, Blake.
Welcome back to the All Hazards Prepper Show. This is your host, Blake. Hope everyone having a great week out there. It is whenever this show airs, it's probably going to be October 14th or 15th. So I'll kind of get into where we're going here on the All Hazards Prepper, some thoughts from the last few weeks on the last disasters, some thoughts about some things I've been going through recently that as a prepper that I can learn from. I wanted to share that with you guys. First off, I'll kind of start first off with disasters and move into what's going on right now in my life and how you could apply it to yours as a prepper. The disasters that's going on, we're still here in Western North Carolina. Well, I'm not here, but in North Carolina, dealing with the aftermath of Hurricane Helene. Just some tragic things that you're seeing come out of there, but also some really great stories that are coming out of there. You got to look at the good rather than the bad. I don't know the death toll right now. I did see, unfortunately, just in the Asheville area alone, which is if you're not familiar with Western North Carolina, that's pretty much the only major city, if you want to call it a city per se, there. Pretty large population, big tourism if you've heard of Biltmore before, it's there. A lot of other great scenic sites and great downtown life. I know the school district came out and said that just alone 4 students had died, and there was a lot more missing. Excuse me, that they were trying to locate. So just some tragic things that are going on. But the good thing is there's a lot of donations pouring in, physical donations, resources, and monetary donations. I saw a lot of country music singers. I think Luke Combs and Eric Church and Billy Strings and a bunch of other people were going to put on a relief show in Charlotte, North Carolina, which will be great. Excuse me, I got a cough really bad, so I'm stuck in my throat. Anyway, there's a lot going on there. I think the biggest, and my dad and brother went there last week with Baptist on a Mission, which is a church or religious affiliated nonprofit group that deals with disaster relief. They do a lot of feeding, mass feeding, whether that be for those affected or for volunteers, and then they also do a lot of going in homes and taking everything out that's been flooded and cutting, doing the manual labor after a disaster. One of the great organization that's highly utilized following disasters. They went out there to Boone, North Carolina, which if you're not familiar where Boone is, it's home of Appalachian State University, kind of the big college for the western part of the state. And it's kind of a little bit north of Asheville, northwest of Asheville a little bit, but they went up there and met with a lot of people, helped out a lot over the last few days, and some of the stories they told me, I'm not going to go into all that, but very tragic stories. But I think the key thing that whenever I was talking to my dad and my brother about those things was, how people just didn't have insurance. They didn't know where the replacements for everything was going to come, how they were going to replace their home. They weren't financially able to either. And, that's a big thing. So, if you're listening to this and you don't have insurance on your home, on your stuff, on your car, on yourself, everything, insurance is the way to go, people. It is, that's the backup plan for most people. If they're going to lose everything, if something happens like that, insurance is essentially what's going to cover it. Make sure that your insurance policy covers for the amount of stuff you have. I know insurance can be pricey, especially for some in this economy. I think a lot of people can learn from this disaster is getting insurance. The second biggest thing was they thought FEMA was going to come save the day and bring the checkbook, and I'm sorry to say, but FEMA does not do that. FEMA will give some money depending on what was, what happened, maybe, but I would not, hold true to that. It's and FEMA is a very slow process too. Not saying that insurance is probably not, it's probably a little bit faster than FEMA, but it's pretty slow as well. So really, do not rely on the government to come save the day. That's, state government, local government. Saving the day is in like, monetary, giving you money to, relief money to, build back what you have. Yes, the local government, state governments, federal government will be there. Local disasters start and end locally. That as soon as a disaster happens, something like that's happening in Western North Carolina, it's the local resources that are responding, and then they're working, they're requesting stuff from the state. Most of the state stuff had already been pre-positioned and mobilized to quickly, aid local municipalities, and then the federal government, such as FEMA, Health and Human Services. The list goes on. The DoD has now got involved. There's several troops that were deployed out to Western North Carolina from Fort Liberty here in Fayetteville, where we're located, and brought to help. But it took almost a week to do. So you really have to, have insurance, making sure that you have insurance, making sure you have that rainy day fund to, help with some cost up front if you can. And then, a lot of people, during after the disaster, and we talked about this last week, they were expecting, the local, government or the, local emergency management, local fire department, even the state right there with water, food, and everything else, the hour after, everything went away and all the the rain stopped and the flood water stopped and all that, and ultimately that's not the case. You really, as a prepper, as a person, you need to make sure that you have at least a 3-day supply of everything. Be able to support yourself and your family and those that depend on you for 3 days. And after that, work your way up, because I promise you, it's probably going to be a little bit longer than that 3 day. And if you can, survive for a week by yourself, or 2 weeks, or even longer, that's even better. Starting with water and food, and then working on those physical resources. Generators are great, but not great whenever there is no gas. Alternate sources of power are great. Solar, things like that. Especially following a disaster, the sun will rise at some point. So being able to do that is great. So and then Milton affected Florida this week. Definitely some devastation there. And just the storms this year. Once a storm gets going, the rapid intensification we're seeing with these storms and the how quickly it will fire off, and next thing you know, we go from a Cat 1 or a tropical storm to a Cat 5, and then as it gets closer to land, it's going to drop down. But the impacts of these storms are insane, due to ocean temperatures, due to the environmental conditions. So Milton definitely did some damages down there in Florida. Florida does have a great emergency response. Floridians in general, they know how to deal with hurricanes because they go through it all the time. Unfortunately, in Western North Carolina, where there's not a lot of resources, it's kind of poor in general. Well, it is poor in general in a lot of places, and due to mountainous conditions, it's going to be a little bit harder to recover. So it's just important to take note of that whenever we're talking about where geographically something affects a disaster affects an area, really impacts that recovery time frame in the span. So prayers to Western North Carolina, prayers to Florida, and hopefully we are, knock on some wood, I'm in my truck. Right now we're shooting these from the truck, that we are done with hurricanes, but there is another system brewing out way out in the Atlantic below. Coming off, it's pretty much a disturbance, just like our typical, well, not typical, because the last two storms have formed in the Gulf, but typically, as we talked about earlier in the season, that these storms come off from the Sahara Desert, from Africa, dust cloud forms into disturbance, forms into tropical depressions, forms into tropical storm, and then to a hurricane, and then comes across the Atlantic. Right now, we are seeing one of those types of scenarios happening. Just read, I think the National Hurricane Center bumped it up to 40% of chance for the development within the next 7 days or so. So we'll be watching that, seeing where that's going to go. Definitely just prayers that this is the last hurricane. A lot of resources are taxed right now. There's a lot of resources out from the federal, state governments. And just in North Carolina alone, I saw a map the other day of all the states that have been assisting, sent USAR or search and rescue teams, sent resources, and it was near about every state in the United States. There was just a few that were not way out west, but just about every state has sent resources. So any disaster right now, we're getting into the fall, we're getting into winter weather. We're getting into a lot of places start getting into rainy seasons. If you will, on that, a lot of places start getting a lot more rain. So anyway, and then we're in still wildfire season too. So been monitoring out west. I've seen a couple wildfires pop up, but haven't seen anything that's whoa yet. But I do live on the East Coast, not as getting as much news on wildfires unless it gets pretty large, like I used to living out west. Anyway, so that's where we are in the natural disasters. So let's talk about what I've learned over the last couple of weeks as a prepper. As I said on the last show I gave out, I think I posted last week. My family has been going through some things with my brother and sister-in-law. Everything is good on that front now. They're good. Thank you for prayers. If you're in our inner circle and family friends and seen that, everything is better now. Still, road recovery. And now I am on the way back to the hospital because my wife is in the hospital. I won't go into too much detail, but she's had some surgery. If you are in our inner circle or friend and family group, you probably know. But anyway, prayers to her. We have not lived in our apartment for the last, we're going on 4 weeks now. We have essentially moved from where we are down to Fayetteville, which is only a 30-minute drive, so it's not very far. But living with, right now we're sleeping in the hospital, but living with my in-laws and my brother and sister-in-law. Originally, we were trying to help out with brother and sister-in-law. Now we've moved to now having to deal with my wife, and she's not able to, wasn't able to be there. So anyway, now we're having to be at my in-laws. Long story short, we're not where we usually are. We're not in our typical routine. We've had to kind of stop, life up and, well, not stop life, but continue life elsewhere. And it really, as a prepper, I want to talk about how important it is to be adaptable to situations. You never know what's going to come up in life. You never know if, yourself or your family member, placed in the hospital, placed somewhere else that is not, typical. You don't know, maybe one day your house floods or you can't live in your home because of, some circumstance, has mold or something. I don't know. I'm just coming up with, random things that could happen. You have to be adaptable to these situations. And in the last few weeks, we have learned how to adapt, to our new situation that we're dealing with, that we are no longer, really living at our home. We've gone back and got stuff and really, I will say during that initial, we kind of already had moved down there, but there was a time over the last week where my wife just had to come to the hospital, put in the hospital, and I actually work at the hospital we're at, I had to go to my office and get my emergency kit. With my clothes and my toiletry bags and stuff like that to sleep overnight because I wasn't able to go home. And having that resource there and having that emergency kit was a lifesaver. I mean, it was because I wasn't able to go back to my in-laws until the next day to get, some more clothes and stuff like that. So really, having that emergency kit at work is great too, especially if you live far away from where you work. A lot of Americans today don't live where they work. They commute 30 minutes, kind of like I do. And you really having, some clothes and some toiletry bags and, something like that, some extra medications, possibly, some way to sleep in your office, especially if you have a job like I do. Is really necessary. So making sure you have that, or having it in your car or something like that, is definitely helpful. But really, as a prepper, I think everyone should be adaptable. You got to overcome and adapt to these situations. It's hard, it's tough. It's just a situation that we're in. We've been praying a lot over the last few weeks. We've had some other things happen to other family members. We won't go into a whole saga, but you really have to be adaptable and not, get down into the situation. If you're adaptable, if you have, some plans, some resources in hand, it really helps you in the long run. It's helped us the last few weeks be able to get over and overcome faster from what we're having to deal with. So being adaptable is definitely a good trait as a prepper to have. And just being, open-minded, not getting down the dumps about, whatever life situation's handed to you. If you're religious like I am, having trust in God, and knowing that there's a plan that might not be what your plan is, but being adaptable in that way. Every day you wake up and you think X, Y, and Z is going to happen, and you're going to go to normal routine. And well, what if one day that little routine is thrown off because your car breaks down or something? You have to be adaptable to these situations. And quickly overcome, not just get down the dumps and, go cry and put yourself in a hole about it. Really just coming up and tackling that situation, putting resources at it, putting your manpower at it, really will help you in the long run. So just an idea I want to talk about, something I was thinking about. I probably could do a better job of elaborating on it a little bit, but we'll get there at some point. We are everywhere right now. I'm trying to still post kind of all hazard prepper updates. I'm still trying to post, occasionally on social media. I do a lot of stories. So if you got me muted on the stories, it's fine. I mute other people too. But making sure you follow us on there. We're still on Twitter as well. Pretty active on there right now with a lot of meteorologists and EM friends. So it's fun to geek out on there as well. So going hopefully if everything goes right, we can be in a normal situation in the next couple of weeks, and I can start having some guests on. I have a few guests that have texted me or messaged me and said, hey man, I want to be on the show. Right now I'm kind of at a stopping point on guests until everything quiets down. Thoughts and prayers are definitely needed right now for me and my family, but we're doing good because we are adaptable, we overcome, and we have faith about it. So I hope everyone stays safe out there. We will try to get on maybe later in the week. And of course, from the truck right now, I can't come from my studio, my show. I usually have my studio set up with my mic and stuff, so it's a little different. But we'll try to come out later in the week, maybe with some other ideas we've been coming up with and seeing lately, especially if we have some tropical developments. So I hope everyone stays safe out there, has a great week. The All Hazards Prepper out. Thank you for listening to the All Hazards Prepper Show. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. Never miss an episode by subscribing and turning on notifications when new shows drop. Remember, stay aware, stay prepared, and stay alive.